It's all about the slappy and sloppy drums, the thick and distorted re-spaces, the haunting vocal samples, and the ethereal synths that I use within my wave music. Now today, I'm going to show you how I mix my wave track in Logic Pro. Come join me. Today here we have a Logic project, a very simple Logic project. I know it's a very small project, therefore the scale of mixing is going to be smaller, but the same principles apply when you make a bigger project and you want to mix a lot more things. So let's just put it this way, I like to mix it in one directional dimension. So the drums, the bass, and then the synth. And then from there, I will expand out to more of a stereo imaging kind of effect and chorusy and all those reverbs and stuff like that. The first thing that I want to conquer in this mixing stage is the clashing of frequencies and of course the levels as well. My drums is in pink, my bass is in blue, my synths are in turquoise, my samples are in green. The drum section here, they are all sent as a pre-fader to another bus called bus 10. Now bus 10 is basically a parallel compression bus. So if I were to go back to my view here, I'll just cycle this area and I'll solo out just the drums. This is how the current drum sounds like. Ooh. So as much as possible, you want to keep that groove, right? And by the way, these drums are in machine. I have the samples or the MIDI mapped out to each individual track. So if you guys want to check out the Machine to Logic Pro template, you guys can check it out up here or I'll link down in the description box below. Okay, so for the drums, we have DR1 to DR5. DR1 being kick. I am just going to mute all my drums. This is the kick. Now the first thing I want to add to a drum kick is an EQ, because it's more of like a subtractive EQ. So let's have a listen to something that is shorter over here. So I want to subtract the low ends first. Of course, remember, keep in mind, you don't want to lose most of the drum's coloration. Adding a little bit of a low cut here would be great. So let's just play it. You don't need much of the high ends on this drum kit, so I'm gonna just put a high cut filter. So let's play it. Alright, I like that. Second thing is I want to add another EQ. Basically, it's to make the drums better in terms of the frequencies that I want to boost. First is a subtractive frequency, the other one is an additive frequency. I have a tutorial on how to mix bass. It also includes a bit of subtractive and additive frequency modifications. So if you guys want to check it out, I'll leave up the video up here and also in the link in the description. So this will be the additive EQing. We'll just pull this up. Oh, it's too loud. Just gonna narrow that down. So I like this frequency from 200 to 300 range. I'm just going to bring down this frequency so that I can boost it maybe up to about 3.2 dB. Let's try it. Let's try to bring this one up. Within that 200 to 300K frequency, that's a bit of knock for the drums, and I think that's totally fine, so I'll stick to that. The drum kick is the one that I make the levels to a certain standard or threshold, so the rest of the levels of my synth and my drums and all my other melodic pads will follow with this level. So as a start, I would like to do a -13 kind of threshold. So let's just put it at -13 and let's see how it sounds like in the main level. As you can see, it's pretty soft. Next thing I will do is to add a compressor. The compressor itself ensures that it brings up a softer level. So my target right now is to bring almost in par to -13. I would usually give a very mid ratio, maybe a 2.5. Very fast attack because it's a drum. It has to be transient-ish. Release, I'll probably just stick it around there. Give a little bit of knee at 0.6 and let's just play it. You can see the levels are actually increasing. Now the next thing I'll do is I want to make it up to how much it's lost here. Now the next 4 parts of the drum kits is going to be easy because you're going to use this -13 as a base for your drum kit. Next is actually the snare. Let's just place it here. Let's just play it with the snare up. Remember to look at the levels first. Ensure your overall level is at less than -6 and that's fine. So let's just have these levels right for the snare. The snare is lacking a little bit of slap. So let me just raise that up. I am going to apply a channel EQ. This one, I don't want to do subtractive, but I just want to do additive EQ because I don't think it's necessary, especially for a one-shot transient on a snare that only goes for a few milliseconds. Just throw it, cut it at 100 range, and I'm going to boost this up. That's fine. This one's pretty weak as well. I'm just going to raise it a little bit. So 2 to 300 range. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is add a compressor just to bring the levels up. So we're just going to look at that. I'm just going to put it down. Bring it up a little bit. Ideally, to be the same output as this from the input, the output should be ideally the same. There we go, it's almost there. Next thing is the heads. Let's go. Frequency. We'll just bring the heads a little bit more to the 4 and 500 for the low cut range. Bring the 2 to 3K up a little bit. As you can see, there's a balance between my drum itself. So I have the kicks and the snare usually from the low to the mid. And then the heads and the crash usually is from the mids to the high. This is very important for you to know about separating the frequencies to make sure they sound really good on its own. I'm just going to add a compressor now. Bring this down. Great, it's similar. There's a second head that's going on as well. I'm going to just bring this up. The second head is a lot more higher. So let's just push it to give it a bit more presence because we have the main head running at every quarter beat. See? Raise a little bit of presence. Remember, when it comes to hi-hats, I don't want to squash it too much with the compressors because they have a lot of the thing that goes this. Those things you don't want to over squash it. It will sound very unnatural for your hi-hats or your crashes. Let's check the levels one more time. As you can see, the headroom over here, it's about 9.9, negative 9.9. I leave that a lot from negative 9.9 to 0 because later on when all the other instruments come and all the parallel compression comes in, you have more room to play with the frequency boosting. So this is very important if you want to mix a lot of the instrumentals in electronic music, especially when you have a lot, like literally a lot of VSTs running. Alright, down to the last hi-hats, which is the R5. This is a lot more constant, so the presence should be there. Let's play it. You see, when I bring it up to the 2K, it's actually losing its character. So I'll just put it at around 595 kind of low cut. Bring up the 1K. I'm gonna just put the compressors in. When you're compressing something, make sure the needle here is alive because you want to compress something at least a little bit. Hi-hats and cymbals, there's like little details within the higher ends that we can't capture sometimes because hi-hats are usually the most secondary parts of the drum kit. Next thing I want to do is to have these drums parallel compressed. Now what I mean by parallel compression is basically to have the signal of the original drums together with the signal of the compressed drums running together and increasing the volume a little bit and just making the drums really fat. As I mentioned earlier, the drums from DR1 to DR5 is all sent as a pre-fader. You click on this, there's a pre-fader option, to a source track, which is bus 10. So pre-fader means the drum signals before the effects, they go into another bus. So you get the raw sounds itself. So I do have it prepared here. It's called parallel track. It's the one in yellow. If you look here, it's this track, the one in yellow. I'm going to compress this track. That's why it's called parallel compression for the drums. And I'm going to be playing it together with the drums that are already processed within DR1, which is here, to DR5. I am just going to play it and increase the volume of this. You can see that the drums are starting to compress in this parallel bus. Let's increase the volume a little bit. You can hear the thickness. Now before I even adjust the parallel compression volume, I will just make sure that the compression on the parallel track itself is working nicely together with the input. So same principles apply. Let's do it. This one needs to have a little bit of compression, not too much. This one, the input is clipping because it's coming from the original source of the drums. The output, I try to make it not clip, and then later I will just mix the level of that to the main drums that's already been processed. So right now the level is at -1.3, which is just a nice sweet spot just below the 0 dB. Next thing I'll do is play by ear, raising the level of the parallel compressed drum track. This is where I will see my stereo out track over here to make sure it's -6 or below. Right now it's 2.6, so the tracks for both tracks is pretty hot. I'll just bring this down. Perfect, it's at -6.4. The next one I'm going to mix is the bass. It's this bass. I'm going to just solo and let you guys listen. If you guys want to have my Reese Bass Massive Pack, you guys can buy it over at my Ko-fi page. Go support my Ko-fi page. Download those Reese Packs bass that I crafted from Massive X and also in Massive Legacy. I'll leave the description down below or the link up here with the Massive Reese Bass tutorial. I just want to make sure that the bass is sitting comfortably within the drum mix. So let's play it. This -6 is actually for the headroom for your mastering later on. I am just going to start adding in a EQ. So if I were to solo the bass right now, pull this in. Okay, so for the kicks earlier on, there's a 2 to 300 boost and also the 5 to 800 boost. Right now for the bass, I would want to have more boost on the lower ends below the 200 kilohertz. sort of like resonance roll in the bass that I like. I'm just going to shift it within the 5 to 800k and just boost a little bit and make it more narrow. Let's do it at 600k. See, that frequency is what I like. I'm just going to boost it up a little bit. The next step is to have it compressed. This is the first level of compression to bring out the lower ends. I like to use the Studio FET because it's a lot more hard. Sometimes I like to keep the distortion a bit hard. See, the compression is a bit hard here. I'm just going to raise the level up to around 8 dB because we're losing at about 8 decibels of it. That means the thing is going to get louder. I'm just going to reduce this to make sure the levels are good. Perfect. It's about -9 on the input and the output. Second level of compression is something to make it a lot more cleaner, a lot more constant within the mix. So the loudness is always there within the compressor itself. So this one's going to be a lesser compression. That was easy, a very subtle compression. Now let's just play the bass again together with the drums. You might want to have a little bit of distortion just to give a bit of presence if you feel that the bass is conflicting with the kick. So let's investigate it here. Perfect. This bass sounding perfect right now with the drums. So let's just play the whole thing with the drums and the bass. Usually I would like to work on the stack up. So I'll go to here and I'll start with these two, synth 1. So at this point, I'm just going to bring this down to 0 and I'm just going to play with the levels first. So there's a lot of clashing frequencies between these synths and the bass itself and also the lower ends. I'm just gonna add a bit of EQ, cut off those lower ends. Great, I have that EQ boosted just to bring up the higher mids. I am just gonna add a compression, just a subtle one to bring up lower nuances. Alright, and I'm just gonna bring this down a little bit. Now I'm gonna give it a little bit of space. I'm just gonna add, a effect that widens it. So I use this thing called the wider. So now when I widen it, it's a little bit more louder. I'm just gonna reduce this. Now the next synth I want to do in the stack up is this one, synth 2. Well, let's just rename this as synth 2 and this is as synth 3. This is more like a lead kind of synth. Let's pull up the equalizer again and make sure we boost the higher ends. Great, I'm just gonna compress it now. Levels on the compressors are good. Very clean mix. I love it. To elevate it further, I'm going to use this thing called the Pancake 2, which is an amazing stereo imaging plugin. It's by Cable Guys, Pancake 2 stereo. Let's have a listen. You can feel a lot of movement going on within the synth itself. So usually the bass and the drums will stay a lot more in the middle. The synths, I like to put it at the side and moving around, so it creates like a glue to the drums and the bass. The last synth I want to mix is this stack up. This synth is gonna go with the first synth. So let's play synth 3. Then again, there's a lot of clashes of frequencies over here. Let me just cut it out. The reason why I bring the 2 to 6K up is because the other synth, which is the synth 1, it's more of the mid between 500 to 2K kind of rise. 500 to 2K kind of rise sits within the first synth. The 2 to 8K kind of rise sits within the third synth. So right now you can hear a nice separation of the frequencies. Add a bit of compressor to bring up some of the small details. I'm just gonna add a wider, but then probably not so wide as the first synth. There you go. Could be at the 25% mark. So to double check with the drums and the bass, let's just play this stack. Now, the last one that I'm gonna mix with the stack of the drums and the synths is basically the vocal samples. It's a very simple, choppy kind of vocal sample. We'll just bring this down, get the levels in first together with the drums, bass, and the synths. Usually for the vocal samples, I would like to have a very low cut filter, a very strong low cut filter to bring the higher frequencies out as the main riff of the song. So right now the most dominant one is from 500 to 2K. I'm just going to boost it over here. So that sounds great already. I am just going to compress it a little bit to bring a little bit of the tonalities out from this vocal sample. The last thing I'm going to put on this vocal sample is like a reverb or a delay, and this is a Valhalla Supermassive, and I've played around with it before this at a 1/8 dotted kind of delay and 23% on the wall. If this Valhalla Supermassive is not enough, of course you can also have the wider VST plugin over here. So you can play around with the low pass. You can actually cut down the low ends and make it wide. So let's have a listen with this VST. Perfect. So now we have a full mix of these tracks. I'm gonna let you guys listen to the whole track and let's see how it sounds. I know this is a smaller scale of mixing tutorial here for wave music, but it applies the same for the rest if you're doing a bigger project. I'm Vibe Synthetic once again. If you guys really like this video, remember to smash that like button and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate if you guys can turn on the post notification bell button as well, so whenever I release new wave videos, you guys will get notified. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Remember, stay safe, stay cool. Remember to make wave music. Peace out.